The story opens in a quiet, ordinary setting, perhaps a cozy coffee shop, a small bookstore, or a sunlit library, where the young male narrator notices her for the first time. She isn't flashy, but there's a quiet elegance in the way she moves, the deliberate grace in her gestures, the way her fingers linger on the spines of books or the rim of her coffee cup. He is immediately struck, not just by her beauty, but by the calm confidence she carries, an aura that seems to make the air around her warmer, slower. The scene should establish the emotional lens of the narrator. He is observant, sensitive, and introspective. Through his eyes, the audience sees the subtle details, the soft curve of her smile as she reads, the faint laugh that escapes her in a moment of private amusement, the gentle tilt of her head as if she's listening to some invisible music. The camera, or narrative perspective, lingers, inviting the audience to feel the same pull of curiosity and fascination. Here, the story begins to hint at the age difference without emphasizing it directly. The narrator might notice the lines that hint at her life experience, the ease with which she navigates the world, or the way she seems anchored in herself. Yet these observations aren't judgments. They're admiring, quietly reverent. Emotionally, this part introduces hesitation and longing. The narrator might catch himself wanting to speak, then hesitating, aware of the subtle social and emotional distance between them. This hesitation is key. It seeds the slow-burn tension that will carry through the story. Sensory details are crucial. Describe how her perfume, or the faint scent of her hair, brushes past him, leaving a warmth in its wake. Note the texture of her scarf or sweater, the sound of her voice when she orders coffee or exchanges a few polite words. Every small observation adds intimacy and draws the audience closer to both characters' inner worlds. This keynote also introduces the first connection, however fragile. Perhaps she accidentally drops a book, and he instinctively picks it up. Their hands brush, brief, fleeting, but electric in its subtlety. Neither says much, yet the moment lingers. The narrator feels a quiet rush of excitement, a mix of admiration and nervousness. She might smile at him, just a hint, and he senses an openness, though the interaction remains polite and restrained. Finally, the environment reinforces the emotional tone. Soft background music, the gentle murmur of other patrons, sunlight spilling through windows, or the hush of bookshelves. These details heighten the intimacy and the slow pace, making every glance, every brush of a hand, feel significant. Emotional goal. By the end of this part, the audience should feel the spark of attraction, the tension of hesitation, and the promise of connection. They should root for this encounter to grow into something deeper, aware of the age difference as an unspoken layer that adds richness rather than drama. After the initial spark, the story deepens through subtle, repeated encounters that feel almost accidental, yet almost fated. Perhaps the narrator begins noticing her in the same cafe, or walking past a familiar street corner, or even through mutual friends at a small gathering. The magic here is in the gradual, believable build-up. These moments are brief, almost mundane, but each one carries a quiet intensity that makes the audience lean in, waiting for the next glance, the next smile. The narrator's internal voice becomes richer here. He observes not just her movements, but her little rituals, the way she stirs her coffee slowly as if savoring each moment, the gentle arch of her eyebrows when she's thinking, or the way she tucks a strand of hair behind her ear with almost invisible grace. These sensory details convey intimacy without requiring dialogue. They make the audience feel as though they are witnessing something deeply private. Emotionally, the narrator begins to feel the pull of curiosity mixed with restraint. He wants to speak, to learn her name, to understand the life hinted at in her eyes. But something holds him back. The age difference, the quiet awe he feels, and the social perception of approaching someone older. His hesitation is layered. Part respect, part fear, part self-consciousness. This internal struggle makes him relatable and heightens the slow burn tension. The story uses physical proximity to build unspoken intimacy. Perhaps they sit at adjacent tables, their knees almost brushing, or he opens a door for her as they enter a shop, their hands briefly touching. These small physical interactions are charged with meaning. The warmth of her hand, the brief pressure of her palm, the flutter of his pulse. Every accidental touch becomes a quiet confession of attraction, communicated without words. Dialogue is minimal but purposeful. Maybe they exchange a few polite words, but the real connection is in pauses, lingering glances, and micro-expressions. A soft laugh at a shared joke, a subtle nod of acknowledgement, or the way her eyes linger on him a second longer than necessary. All these moments intensify the emotional resonance. The environment reinforces the slow, warm tension. Sunlight streaming through cafe windows casts a gentle glow on her hair, or the scent of fresh books mingles with her perfume in the library. Background sounds, footsteps, murmured conversations, the distant hum of traffic, contrast with the stillness that seems to envelop them in these fleeting moments. By the end of this keynote, the audience should feel the quiet anticipation and emotional closeness building, even without any overt romantic declaration. The characters are still cautious, still observing boundaries, but the repeated encounters plant seeds of desire and curiosity that will grow into a deeper connection. The tension is palpable, yet entirely tender, drawing viewers further into the emotional rhythm of their unfolding relationship. Emotional goal: leave the audience with a sense of warm anticipation, subtly aching for the next encounter, and fully invested in the young man's quiet admiration and internal conflict as he navigates the magnetic pull of someone older, wiser, and achingly captivating. By this stage in the story, the initial fascination has transformed into a more complex emotional awareness. The narrator, still young and tentative, begins to see her not just as a figure of graceful allure, but as a person with depth, subtle vulnerabilities, and a past hinted at through the quiet lines of her expressions. These revelations don't come through exposition. They emerge in fleeting gestures, glances, and tone of voice, making the audience feel as if they are discovering her alongside him. The encounters now carry more weight. Perhaps they share a brief conversation while waiting in line, or she asks for his opinion on a book or a painting. Her voice has warmth and confidence, yet an almost imperceptible softness that hints at trust and openness. When she laughs at something small and unexpected, the narrator notices the light in her eyes, a reflection of experience, kindness, and a hint of melancholy. The audience begins to understand that the age difference is more than physical. It represents life experiences, perspective, and quiet wisdom, which both intimidate and fascinate him. Sensory details continue to draw the audience in. The narrator notices the texture of her coat, the way her fingers brush across a tabletop, or the soft weight of her scarf as it falls around her shoulders. When she gestures or moves closer in conversation, he feels the subtle warmth of her proximity, the almost imperceptible scent of her perfume mingling with the air between them. These details are intimate but completely YouTube-safe, heightening tension through subtle physicality rather than overt action. Emotionally, the narrator wrestles with hesitation and curiosity. He wants to ask more, to stay longer, but social boundaries and his own uncertainty hold him back. This inner struggle is key to the slow burn pace. Viewers sense that every word, every pause, every micro-moment could shift the balance between casual acquaintance and something deeper. The tension is unspoken yet tangible, like a string pulled taut. The story begins to explore shared vulnerabilities in this part. Perhaps she reveals a minor personal struggle or a fleeting worry, a missed opportunity, a nostalgic regret, and he listens, careful, empathetic, not wanting to overstep. Her openness, even in small doses, draws him closer emotionally. When he responds, it's thoughtful and measured, showing his sincerity. This mutual recognition, even in minor exchanges, builds an emotional intimacy that feels heavier than physical proximity alone. Environment and ambience continue to mirror their inner world. A quiet cafe with soft jazz, a sunlit park bench with the rustle of leaves, or a bookstore aisle with the faint scent of aged paper all reinforce the warm, reflective, almost suspended feeling of these encounters. Every detail slows the pace, letting the audience savor the tension, the curiosity, and the subtle, growing connection. Emotional goal. By the end of this part, the audience should feel the relationship evolving beyond mere attraction. There's a shared understanding and curiosity, a tension mixed with admiration, and the sense that both characters are quietly intrigued by what lies beneath the surface. The slow burn momentum is building. Viewers should feel eager to witness the next step, knowing that emotional depth, trust, and small intimate gestures will gradually lead toward profound closeness. At this point, the story pivots from tentative curiosity to genuine emotional connection. The young narrator and the older woman have grown familiar through repeated encounters, and the tension is no longer only about admiration or fascination. It now carries mutual vulnerability. This part emphasizes subtle intimacy, showing how the relationship begins to deepen without rushing into overt romance. The scene could open in a quiet, semi-private environment, a late afternoon walk in a park, a cozy cafe corner, or a shared waiting area in a bookstore. The setting is intentionally calm, allowing the characters' emotions to take center stage. Every sensory detail is heightened. The soft crunch of leaves underfoot, the warmth of sunlight on their shoulders, or the muted aroma of coffee in the background. These small, tangible cues anchor the audience in the moment, making the emotional stakes feel immediate and real. Dialogue now becomes a tool for gentle revelation. Perhaps she shares a small, personal memory, a moment of doubt, a fleeting loneliness, or a private triumph. She speaks with measured confidence, yet there is a softness in her tone that hints at the vulnerability she rarely shows others. The narrator listens with full attention, feeling both honored and slightly nervous, acutely aware of the age gap and the subtle emotional boundaries between them. Physicality is delicate but meaningful. She may brush a hand lightly across a tabletop, and he instinctively mirrors the gesture, their fingers grazing ever so briefly. Or she adjusts her scarf, and he catches the movement, feeling the warmth radiating from her proximity. Perhaps, in a moment of shared laughter or reflection, she rests a hand lightly on his shoulder, a gesture brief yet laden with trust and reassurance. These touches are sensory signifiers of closeness, showing romantic tension without ever crossing into sexual territory. Internally, the narrator's thoughts oscillate between admiration, nervous excitement, and careful respect. He notices not only her physical grace, but also the intensity of her emotional presence, how she carries both confidence and quiet hesitance. Each word exchanged leaves him slightly breathless, a subtle ache of longing mixed with the comfort of being truly seen. The narrative also explores hesitation and self-awareness. He wonders if his feelings are appropriate, if she might perceive them as forward, or if the age difference creates an invisible wall between them. This internal conflict heightens the slow burn effect. Viewers sense the tension building with every glance, pause, and slight touch, fully invested in the emotional stakes. By the end of this keynote, there is a quiet turning point. Perhaps the narrator finally meets her gaze and holds it longer than before, sharing a wordless understanding, a recognition of mutual intrigue and trust. The audience should feel the first sense of emotional intimacy that goes beyond curiosity, setting the stage for deeper connection in subsequent parts. Emotional goal. Leave viewers with a sensation of gentle yet powerful emotional awakening, a growing sense of closeness, and the tension of unspoken desire. The story now moves from observation to subtle confession, preparing the audience for a slow, deliberate progression toward trust, warmth, and eventual romantic attachment. By this point, the relationship has moved from tentative fascination to mutual emotional dependence. The previous encounters and quiet confessions have created a sense of trust, and the story now heightens the romantic tension, showing how the characters begin to rely on one another for comfort, validation, and understanding. This is the emotional peak where subtle desire and intimacy collide without needing physical romance. The scene could take place during a shared challenge or vulnerable moment. Perhaps he comforts her after a minor setback, or she offers support when he is quietly struggling. The environment should amplify the emotion. A softly lit living room, the hush of evening in a park, or the muted ambience of a bookstore closing for the day. The sensory details remain essential. The warmth of the fading sun, the faint smell of her perfume mixing with the crisp air, the gentle brush of her hand against his arm as she gestures. Each element reinforces the intimacy and emotional resonance of the scene. Dialogue in this keynote emphasizes honesty and emotional exposure. They share thoughts and feelings they haven't voiced before. Fears, uncertainties, and fleeting regrets. She might speak of a past disappointment, a moment when life didn't go as expected, and he listens without judgment, offering a steady presence. In turn, he reveals his insecurities or hesitations about the age difference, social expectations, or his own inexperience with love. The exchanges are slow, measured, and deliberate. Every pause meaningful, every glance weighted with unspoken longing. Physical affection remains subtle but potent. A hand on the shoulder, a gentle brush against the back of the hand, or their knees brushing under a shared table conveys trust, comfort, and emotional closeness. These gestures are tender and charged with unspoken desire, demonstrating intimacy without ever becoming sexual. The audience feels the magnetic pull between them, the warmth of proximity and the electricity of shared attention. Internal reflection drives the slow burn tension. The narrator notes the intensity of her presence, how it makes him hyper-aware of his own emotions, how her calm confidence both reassures and unnerves him. He feels the longing to be closer, to linger in these moments, but the social gap and his own hesitations restrain him. This internal tug-of-war keeps the emotional pacing deliberate and immersive. By the end of this keynote, the audience should feel that the connection between the characters has reached a peak of emotional intimacy. The tension is thick but still restrained, leaving viewers on the edge of anticipation. This is the moment where the audience senses the possibility of love and closeness fully realized, yet still respects the careful, slow evolution of the relationship. Emotional goal: leave viewers with a sense of heightened emotional stakes, the ache of unspoken desire, and the deep satisfaction of witnessing two people fully see and care for each other. This is the emotional climax before the story moves toward resolution, blending longing, trust, and tender intimacy into a resonant, YouTube-safe romantic moment. At this stage, the story moves toward emotional resolution while maintaining the warmth and intimacy of the slow-burn romance. After the peak of tension in the previous part, the young narrator and the older woman begin to navigate their feelings with more openness, allowing mutual affection and trust to blossom naturally. This keynote focuses on subtle gestures, quiet moments of connection, and a deepening of emotional intimacy. The setting reinforces this unfolding warmth. Perhaps they share a quiet afternoon together, a stroll through a sun-dappled park, lingering in a small cafe with soft music, or sitting on a balcony as twilight settles. The environment is calm, inviting, and reflective, emphasizing the intimacy of the moment. Every sensory detail, the gentle warmth of sunlight on their shoulders, the faint scent of her perfume, the softness of her scarf brushing against his hand, serves to heighten the emotional resonance of their closeness. In this part, dialogue becomes gentle, affirming, and subtly playful. They may tease each other softly, laugh together over small, shared observations, or speak of minor dreams and hopes. The words are simple, but each carries weight because of the trust they now share. The narrator might comment on her warmth or express quiet admiration, while she acknowledges his sensitivity or insight with a smile that lingers just a moment too long. These verbal exchanges are complemented by long pauses, meaningful glances, and lingering eye contact, reinforcing unspoken understanding. Physical affection is tender, deliberate, and YouTube safe. She may brush a loose strand of hair from his forehead. Their fingers meet and stay intertwined briefly, or she rests her hand lightly on his arm as they walk. These gestures communicate intimacy, care, and emotional security, showing that their connection is growing beyond fascination into genuine affection and closeness. Each touch is described with sensory awareness. The warmth of her hand, the slight pressure of her palm, the subtle rise and fall of her heartbeat felt through her brief contact with him. The narrator's internal perspective deepens in this keynote. He reflects on how her presence steadies him, calms his anxieties, and inspires him to be more present in the moment. He is acutely aware of the balance between admiration, respect, and longing. Likewise, she shows small signs of vulnerability, a fleeting sigh, a thoughtful pause, or the way she leans just slightly closer when she feels comfortable. These moments build emotional intimacy that feels earned and realistic, letting the audience root fully for their connection. By the end of this keynote, there is a sense of quiet culmination. The tension that has been building through hesitation, curiosity, and unspoken desire softens into warmth, trust, and mutual acknowledgement. They are no longer just observers of one another. They are participants in a delicate, evolving relationship where emotional honesty and small gestures of affection define their bond. Emotional goal: leave the audience with a feeling of tender fulfillment, a gentle satisfaction in the slow, deliberate growth of their connection, and anticipation for the final, heartwarming closure. Viewers should sense that love has begun to bloom fully, rooted in respect, emotional intimacy, and shared trust. The story reaches its emotional and narrative culmination in this final part. After weeks of tentative glances, quiet confessions, and subtle, meaningful touches, the young narrator and the older woman arrive at a moment of mutual understanding and emotional fulfillment. The tension of previous encounters resolves gently, leaving warmth, trust, and the quiet satisfaction of a love that has been thoughtfully earned. The scene unfolds in a setting that feels intimate but public enough to emphasize realistic connection. Perhaps a small park at sunset, a softly lit cafe, closing for the evening, or a shared rooftop with the city stretching beneath them. The environment mirrors the emotional tone, the gentle warmth of fading sunlight, the soft hum of distant life, and the subtle textures that make the world feel alive. Every detail, the weight of her hand in his, the breeze ruffling her hair, or the faint perfume lingering in the air, carries emotional significance, heightening the intimacy without overstating it. Dialogue in this part is warm, affirming, and emotionally conclusive. They speak with a comfort born of trust, sharing small reflections on their journey together. Perhaps he admits, quietly but sincerely, how much her presence has changed him, while she acknowledges the steadiness, curiosity, and thoughtfulness he has brought into her life. The words are simple, but the emotional impact is profound. Silence also plays a key role here. Pauses, shared smiles, and lingering glances communicate more than any spoken line could. Physical affection remains tender and meaningful. She may rest her hand against his chest, feeling the subtle rise and fall of his heartbeat. He might brush her hair behind her ear, letting his fingers linger a moment longer than necessary. Perhaps they share a soft cheek kiss or sit close together on a bench, shoulders touching, radiating the quiet security of mutual affection. These gestures are fully YouTube safe, yet deeply intimate, conveying closeness, trust, and the fulfillment of emotional longing. Internally, the narrator reflects on the journey. The fascination of first sight, the hesitation, the thrill of repeated encounters, and the deep emotional resonance of their shared vulnerabilities. He recognizes that the age difference, once a source of hesitation, has become a layer of richness, lending depth, perspective, and appreciation to their connection. Likewise, she experiences a quiet contentment, knowing that she is fully seen, respected, and cherished. If multiple women are involved, this resolution ensures believability and emotional satisfaction. Each relationship thread is honored, allowing all characters to share a sense of warmth, mutual understanding, and respect. Their interactions show cohesion without conflict, emphasizing the emotional depth and authenticity of each connection. By the end of this keynote, the audience should feel complete emotional closure. The slow burn arc has reached its natural conclusion. Tension has resolved, trust has been built, and romantic affection has gently blossomed. Viewers should leave with a sense of warmth, satisfaction, and quiet joy, appreciating the subtle, thoughtful evolution of love, connection, and shared vulnerability. Emotional goal: deliver a heartwarming and fully satisfying conclusion, emphasizing the slow, deliberate growth of love, the richness of mutual respect, and the fulfillment of emotional intimacy, leaving the audience both moved and content.